Brian Davis and Deni Splee here from Spark Rental. And
Hello,
today
everyone.
we are talking. There you are, Deni. So we are talking today all about funny weed, talking all about marijuana and landlords and tenants and what landlords need to know about protecting themselves from any of the dangers associated with marijuana, from grow ops to, smoke damage to the property, to legal liability, all that good stuff. So last week we talked about credit during recessions and how and why to protect your own personal credit during downturns. So today it's all about pot, which of course is legal in many states, either for medical or for recreational use. So Deni, let's start off by just talking about what states is smoking pot totally illegal? Like, where is it not allowed at all?
When I was looking at this, I was surprised because I pretty much thought, at least for medical, that it was legal in all states, but there is still a few: Alabama, Idaho, Kansas, Mississippi. Not that you're all going to remember this, but we have an article coming out about it: Nebraska, North Carolina, South Dakota, Tennessee, Vermont, Wisconsin, and Wyoming. No pot there.
Well, yeah. So those states are no fun, I guess, but not on not on my travel plans anytime soon. But all right, so let's switch gears here and talk about. So federally, it's still illegal, right?
Yeah.
Now, what about states where it is legal either for medical use or for recreational use? Can landlords ban marijuana use in those states?
Well, for the most part, you really have to check, like anything else, you have to check your states right now. Like New York, the New York Senate just passed a bill that can prevent tenants from being evicted just based on pot use or the use of medical marijuana. But it's kind of you're in a snafu a little bit as a landlord because it's federally, no. And a lot of the states for medical use are yes, and some recreationally. So a little easier recreationally because you can prohibit it. And for the most part, you can at least restrict it from the inside of your property for medical.
Kind of like cigarette smoking.
Right. So the interesting part of all this is whether or not, like, there's no precedents, there's no court cases yet regarding this. There was one on a commercial property. So this is one of those things that as we go forward, we'll know more and more because somebody inevitably will bring forth a lawsuit.
There's going to be cases sooner or later, of course.
Oh, without a doubt. Somebody with a bong is going to be going to court and saying, I want to do this. So
just to interject here, so one of the things that we do recommend for landlords is to prohibit smoking of any kind inside the property itself, because it does leave a terrible odor, especially if you have carpets in your unit. It does stain the walls and the paint. It can be hard to, you have to take a couple passes with primer to, cover up those stains and get rid of the smell. You have to replace the carpet. So
it causes
we do recommend
a neighbor issue.
Oh yeah, yeah. It reeks sometimes.
Yeah.
My old neighbor beneath our apartment used to smoke a lot of weed, but I can't say that I particularly minded.
When I was managing the larger community, I did get complaints a lot, and it was always, an older person. Not that I'm saying that older people don't smoke it, but yeah.
Oh, they're the worst.
So it does. It can cause problems because it's like, you can only keep sending a ladder out, but anyway, you got to stay on top of it.
Yeah, but as a general recommendation, just across the board, we do recommend that you prohibit any kind of smoking: cigarettes, weed, crack, whatever. No smoking inside your unit. If they want to smoke, they can go outside.
Right.
All right. So beyond putting a clause in your lease, Deni, what legal rights do landlords have when it comes to marijuana? and their tenants?
Well, here's where, again, it gets a little funny. I mean, in the states where it's illegal, the states that I mentioned, you take them to court. I mean, you give them the warnings and then you serve them the proper notice and you can take them to court for violating your lease, provided that you have something in your lease that says no illegal drugs and no smoking. And then you can go ahead and take care of it. The problem comes in the gray area in the states that do allow medical or recreational. But because it's against federal law, you have a bit more foot to stand on. So I think that if somebody was using medical marijuana and you're simply telling them to smoke outside and then you find out they're not, they're smoking indoors or it's causing problems and they're not willing to work with you to alleviate the problems, I think you can take it to court and it's going to be one of those things that'll be up against the judge and you just got to hope that it's not that one dude that's going to take this all the way until we see a precedent. But,
Right.
I think that if you keep all your, all the complaints that you get, any damage that's done, keep all the paperwork and thing that you can, like pictures and whatever you can, to show that you're not just doing this to be because you personally have a thing about it. You're trying to preserve property and the people that live around the property.
Yeah, absolutely. And, one other point that's worth making about weed is that, so beyond the smoke damage to your unit and beyond the neighbor complaints, there was a spike in apartment fires in Colorado when they legalized recreational smoking of pot. So, there is a greater risk of fire in your property.
Right.
People get super high and, pass out holding a lit joint or whatever. And insurance may not cover that.
Exactly. And that's going to happen more and more because the more those kind of statistics come through, the more the insurance companies are going to say, this is a problem. We don't want this.
Oh, yeah. I mean, look, insurance companies, they're always looking for a loophole to get out of having to pay a $50,000 repair bill, right? So,
exactly.
And that's a pretty good, easy loophole for them to jump through and say, oh, well, this fire was started by negligence on the part of a high tenant.
Right.
So, you're leaving yourself vulnerable to that loophole and insurance coverage there potentially. So,
exactly.
All right. So what can and should landlords do to prevent, damage or neighbor complaints or, God forbid, fires in their unit? What should landlords do when it comes to their marijuana policies, pot policies?
First thing is have a policy and be consistent with it, because especially if you're coming up against medical, because eventually we're going to see, people saying you're against me because I'm disabled or whatever.
Right.
So you want to make sure that you're doing the same across the board for everyone. So if you're saying no smoking, it's no smoking for everyone. If you're saying smoking can be done over here, it's for everyone. And then have that policy in your lease and make sure that they all know it. And if they break that policy, jump on that, get a notice out or whatever you need. But, if you're using texting, emails, but make sure that you can keep that paper trail going and for your records.
Yeah. If you end up in court as a landlord, no matter what it's for, the onus is on you to prove that your tenants violated your lease. So exactly. You have to keep these records because the judge is going to ask for your evidence when you take a tenant to court for violating your lease.
And you're going to need to keep, this is one of those things that a landlord's going to have to keep an eye on. Like in New York, if that goes through, that's going to change things for a New York landlord. So you want to really keep an eye on the marijuana laws.
Absolutely. And by the way, it's worth mentioning that we are about to release our state-specific lease packages through our software, our property management software. And there are landlord protective clauses in there about smoking and marijuana. So I've put a little link to that.
It's not just smoking too. I just want to interject real quick. It's also no illegal drugs. That's an important clause because if you're in a state where it's illegal, it kind of covers you twice. So.
Right. But illegal, you get into a gray area there, like you said, where it's illegal on the federal level, but not on the state level. So, you get into all this weird legal gray area stuff. But
right.
like you said,
it's still good to have that clause in there. It's a protective measure.
100%. 100%. Yeah, the more ways that you can CYA, the better, right? So,
exactly.
All right, Deni,
and just as a disclosure, this isn't. We're not saying that we're against it, for it, or anything. We're just trying to teach everybody how to protect your property.
Yeah, absolutely. Every week we get up here and we talk about, how do you protect your assets and your investments as a real estate investor?
Right.
So, one other point, just to wrap up the conversation about weed here, is that the greatest risk for landlords is actually not necessarily your tenants smoking weed near the property or in the property even. It's actually grow-ops. Grow-ops is where the tenant will hook up lighting and irrigation inside your property to grow weed. And in some cases, it can do massive damage to your property, both because of illegal wiring issues and illegal plumbing setup, also because of the humidity.
Yep.
You can get major mold problems in your property. So that, this is one more reason why you have to do regular inspections of your rental units. Go at least every 6 months to walk through your property from top to bottom and make sure that your tenants aren't operating an entire farm out of your unit.
Serious. I think there was a case way back where somebody was renting like a townhouse. I think it was in Philly, actually. And the whole townhouse, that's what it was. It was just pot plants everywhere. There's nobody living there. That's all they used it for. But it was completely damaged. So, yeah, you got to be careful with that as well.
The entire property can be destroyed from mold. They have to gut the entire thing if there's a bad mold outbreak. So anyway, on that uplifting note,
let's go get high and forget about this. No, just kidding.
Yeah, right. Any last thoughts about marijuana and landlords?
I just think that, just keep an eye on it, and we should see what's going to happen with this, because I think we're going to see more states adopting it as recreational and for medical as we go forward. So it's going to be something we're going to have to attack as we see fit.
All right, well, let us know what you guys want to hear about next week. We go live with these broadcasts every Tuesday at 2 o'clock Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific. We will also be releasing these as a podcast series as well, and a video series. So we will not just be broadcasting live moving forward. We will actually have these in an archive. So on that note, we'll see you guys next week, Tuesday at 2 p.m. Eastern. Have a great week, guys.
Yep. Bye.